Amber, last week on the Intoxicated podcast, Sherry said, and I quote, "There's always a but when you're dealing with an ass." She meant but like, like accept, but it had a dual meaning, like but, like butt, but. You get it? But
Yeah, jokes are always funnier when you have to explain them.
yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
I'm tracking you, Sherry.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, Amber, that Sherry had a zinger last week, and we're expecting nothing less from you, sis. So get ready to bring the noise today, okay?
You got it.
Amber Hollingsworth is a licensed professional counselor, a licensed addiction counselor, and a master addiction counselor. And she's been working with individuals and families struggling with addiction since 2004. She hosts and produces one of the most valuable resources in the recovery community, the Put the Shovel Down YouTube channel. Along with her partners, Kim and Campbell, she runs the Hope for Families Recovery Center. When I was preparing for this and I realized you did grad school work at Clemson, it was an aha moment for me, Amber, because my sister, her husband, and all three of their boys are Clemson Tigers. Maybe that's why I'm so enthralled with your accent. You sound so familiar to me.
Maybe so, yeah.
So, welcome. We're so glad to have you back. This is, if I'm not mistaken, your fourth appearance on the podcast.
Is it four? I thought it was three. Is it four?
I think we did the Rumble thing once. We did a Q&A once. We did the first one. Yeah. So this Intoxicated t-shirt I'm wearing, this is our 5 timers jacket like they do on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, yeah.
So the next time you're on, we'll be mailing you, we can't really afford a jacket. So we'll send you this sweet t-shirt.
That's better.
After just one more. Okay, good. That's great. Well, we've got some questions for you. Some of the questions came from Sherry and I. Some of the questions came from folks in our Echoes of Recovery group who were excited to know that you're coming back on the podcast, and they wanted to get their mitts into you a little bit. So we asked them for feedback on what questions we asked. So are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
Okay, great. So Amber, you have never battled addiction yourself. I am a proud battler of addiction, but I also suffer from imposter syndrome. So I'm curious, I know this is something that we've heard you address before and you address it on your website, but have you ever worried about the lack of an active addiction experience and how that makes you feel or how that makes you look in the eyes of the people you work with? Any imposter syndrome going on there for you?
Not as much anymore, but in the beginning, a lot.
Okay.
Definitely. Because in this field, that's usually the first question you get is, are you in recovery? And even in my my newest journeys as a content creator, that's still the first question I get, which is, what is your story? And that's what they're expecting to hear. But I've come to terms with it. I wouldn't even answer the question. Like when my first gig was dealing with teenagers in an intensive outpatient program. And so when they would ask, I would say, I'll tell you when you graduate, when you become a mentor, because we had a mentors program. And so I knew that by that time, it wouldn't matter what the answer was. So when they became mentors, I would tell them or whatever. But right out the gate, when they asked me first, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get judged. I'm going to get disqualified. So I tried to avoid it. I don't really try to avoid it anymore. I have it like right up front and foremost on the website. I don't hide from it.
I'm curious. So you've got a lot of education. We talked about the master's program at Clemson. You've got lots of certifications. Does that ease it for you more, or does just the years and years of experience and all the stories you've heard and the people you've worked with?
It's not the formal education at all. They don't teach you anything in there about being an addiction counselor. You take one class on addiction counseling, and that basically involves sitting in on some 12-step meetings, writing a report on that. And then I think we learned like Jelinek's disease model or something like that. I can remember seeing that curve, but that's about it. So it definitely was not that. It's all the years of experience. And I've come to feel like my not being in recovery is my greatest asset. Like it was my weakness, but now it's my superpower. Kind of like if you have a disability, you get other superpower or something. It feels like that. Because I feel like I came into it without a lot of assumptions and without a lot of like thinking I knew best. And that forced me to listen better, I think. Listen harder, listen deeper, see people as individuals and not just slap a label on them as an, oh, I already know what you're going to say. I said that, I thought that or whatever. So in the end, I think it's what's made me good at the job, but it did take a bunch of years of getting in there and figuring things out.
Oh, that's such an interesting perspective. I certainly came into this with a lot of preconceived notions and, arrogance about my experience.
That's what I was going to say. And also, like, if you had been an addict and whatever your recovery program was, and it worked well for you, you would want to try to kind of, twist the arm of the other people to do it exactly the way you did it because it was so helpful and work with you. But I love how, like, you just became more individualized and really listened to those people and could be more open-minded.
Right.
I remember like being in culinary program. And like, I remember one of my first interviews out of culinary school, I didn't really have a lot of experience and I was so embarrassed by it. And I remember the chef was like, well, this is great. You're like fresh and you're open and you're not like set in your ways. Like so many trained.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. More open, right. And less set in my ways. And I think the other thing that's my gift with it is because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was kind of insecure about it, and when I had those first jobs, I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want the teenagers to know. I didn't want my bosses to know for sure. Right. So my big goal was just to keep people coming in the program because it would be obvious if my people weren't coming. Right.
Oh,
And
yeah.
trying to keep people with addictions coming, showing up outpatient, teenagers and adults is no easy feat. So not only was it my goal to listen, but it was my goal to figure out how to engage people in the process who didn't want to be in the process. And so I feel like that's probably where my specialty lies is how do you motivate people who don't want to be there? How do you get people out of denial? How do you deal with those people in those really early stages? I feel like that's probably where my gifts are more than anything else. And only because of those really hard experiences and embarrassment, not wanting to be known. I got good at it.
That's so interesting how, this power, this gift you have to connect with people was born out of insecurity. But really, that's the bottom line. If people don't trust you, if they're not willing to be vulnerable with you, how can you ever help them? And I've heard you say, and I've read that early on that work with teens, your approach was unconventional. And I think you even said that when you brought your first partner on who was an intern in your program, you were a little worried about what the intern would think too, right? Because some of your techniques were not what you learn in addiction recovery school.
Well, I felt like I had to warn them that what they were about to see and hear might be, like when you watch a movie or so, or you listen to a YouTube video and they say warning. I felt like that because there was the whole my techniques were unconventional, but also, especially when you deal with teenagers, I'm like, you're going to see and hear some things that are going to just make you want to I don't know, like your head explode or something. So I did feel like I needed to give them a heads up on that.
Well, that's great. I mean, I work with teenagers as a high school soccer coach, and there was a period where I wanted them to toe the line as far as how they communicated and the language they used and everything. But I learned a better way to communicate with them was to let them be themselves and try to, conform myself to their way of communicating. I learned a lot more and they trusted me that way. So I really relate to what you're saying. I'm going to push back one more time on, I know you haven't had any hardcore addictions, but I believe addiction is a spectrum disorder, and we all have a little bit of compulsivity in us. Two of my heroes, names I'm sure you're familiar with, are Dr. Anna Lemke, who wrote Dopamine Nation. She was addicted to vampire romance novels, and Dr. Gabor Mate was addicted to classical music CDs. Mm-hmm. So, Amber, let us in on a little secret. I know you don't have any full-blown addictions, but do you have a hobby or habit that occasionally becomes a concern for you?
I would definitely call myself, when people say you have addictive personality, I am that. The only reason I haven't had a substance abuse addiction is because I just purposefully chose not to try that because I grew up in a family with it and I just knew, not because I thought I wouldn't like it, because I knew I would like it too much. I do everything excessively. Everything I do is like over the top. I don't
Oh,
even, like people who drink too much, they don't even want to start drinking if they can't drink. Like I won't start a Netflix show unless like there's 4 seasons of it or something. Cause I know I can't just watch an episode and wait a week. I'm like, no, if I'm going to watch this, we're going to watch all of it, when go
yeah.
days with no sleep or something. That's me. That's how I'm with
Oh,
everything.
okay, if the three of us sat down with a gallon of ice cream between us, is there a fair chance we'd finish? Because I'm going to eat half of it. So, I mean, I know that's one of my weaknesses, especially now that alcohol's out of the picture.
Well, I wouldn't have come with just 1 gallon.
Okay, there
I
you
would have been better
go.
prepared than that. Like, what are you talking about?
I know. I'm
That's
like,
the answer I
a
want.
gallon between 3.
All right. I love it. How about Clemson Orange? Are you as addicted to that as my sister's family sure is? Never seen so many orange t-shirts in my life.
I haven't seen that. Is that a thing?
I don't know. They went to Clemson, so they've
Oh,
all got.
Clemson. Oh, I don't care about
Clemson
football.
Orange.
Okay.
I went to UT before that, so I should care about orange.
You
But
got a lot of orange in you then.
I know I don't care a thing about football. It's not one of my obsessions at all.
Okay, good. Well, don't get started because you'll not be able to stop, as we've learned. So
I know.
that's important.
I know.
Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, you started out treating kids battling addiction. And as an added service or an extension of the work you were already doing, you started treating the parents of the troubled teens. How
Yes.
did that transform into the work that you're doing now with the partners of adults dealing with addiction?
I think it was really sort of a natural manifestation, really, because I learned, whether it was a young person or an adult person or whoever, that the main problem that the people that were seeing me, no matter what their age, their main problem as they saw it was their closest loved one, which was either their parent or their spouse. In most cases that. Occasionally it would be someone else, like maybe if they live with their grandmother, it might be their grandmother, but it's that main person in your life. And I learned very early on that I wasn't going to get anywhere with them until I solved that problem. Until I got that, whatever that person was doing that was driving my person crazy, until I got that to simmer down. And I felt like it was too hard for me to do both, because if I'm talking to somebody, I'm also talking to their wife or their parent, then they might feel like I'm a spy in between. I don't like to do it when everyone's in the room, because that's just uncomfortable for everybody. That just is a bunch of argument or uncomfortable silences. I don't know. I don't like it. And if you do it separately, then especially the person that has the addiction, they frequently feel like maybe you're telling their secrets. And then I felt caught in between, to be honest. I felt pulled. And so I knew that the family piece needed to happen, and I felt like I couldn't do it for those reasons. And so that's how I got to the point where I decided I was going to have other people do that piece and us work together.
So have you always been the person that's worked with the addict, and then you've let your partners work with the families, or have you switched that up depending on the case?
For the most part, like we can, any one of us can jump in there and see any piece of that. But we have pieces that we tend to like. So Campbell tends to like to see the parents. Kim tends to like to see the spouses, and I like to see the person. I'm a defense attorney. I like to see the person this in the doghouse. I won't even say the one with a problem, because there's a problem for everybody, but the one that's the identified like problem child or whatever. Yeah.
That's funny you say it that way. I struggle with that too, because it becomes a mouthful, because we know that, like, for instance, alcoholism, where we spend most of our time, the alcohol impacts not only the drinker, but the loved ones and other family members. And so, I always struggle. How do I describe? You got the person who's impacted, but then I'm like, no, everybody's impacted. So that's not the right way to say it. You got the person who's consuming, but then that just sounds silly. The consumer and the non-consumer, or the drinker and the non-drinker. Well, but they might be a drinker too, so maybe they're not a non-drinker. Everyone gets impacted by it.
Then you have to figure out how to say it, not be offensive. So
exactly,
it's just too much.
It is. It is. Okay, can you talk a little bit more about, because the purpose for this conversation, the thing we really want to get across to people, is the uniqueness of your approach and the benefits therein to having points of contact with different family members. Can you talk a little bit more about that tag team approach and the benefits that you have to multiple contacts, And how do you communicate kind of within the practice?
Sure. I will say I think it is the most effective method as far as dealing with this specific issue for sure. I don't think I would be very effective without it. So I'm a fan of it, but I'll also admit that it is very labor intensive on our end. It's labor intensive on the clients end and the families end. That's instead of one session a week, that's 2 a week. I gotta go, they gotta go. And sometimes that involves logistics and childcare and everything else. So
Sure.
I think it's worth it, but it is involved and complicated. But I feel like that's where we thrive best is complicated, because these issues are not simple. They're complicated, and it takes a lot of different angles and understandings to really get anything done, I think.
Do you, if somebody comes to you and they don't have that family connection, if it's not a multi-point problem, do you refer people out? Like, do you stick with your specialization working with families?
No, well, if I had someone come to like literally live by themselves, they didn't have like that person. I have definitely worked with people in that situation. In some ways it's good because they tend to be more insightful because they haven't been caught up fighting with someone else about it. But in other ways, to be honest, they have a less better outcome rate. I know I'm not saying that right. Less good
No, it's all
outcomes or
good.
whatever. Because having that family piece is what holds you in line on those bad days. Like when you don't want it, or you're just like, forget it, or, some of those other things where you just want to throw in the towel without some other something there keeping you in it. It's hard. And so you lose them that way. So they come in more self-motivated and more insightful, but I don't know that they necessarily got better chances of long-term recovery.
Because of the accountability that the family provides.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, it's look, like, for example, sometimes we'll see people who's maybe the husband's drinking too much, and then by the time they get to us, the wife's done said, you need to move out into an apartment, and maybe she's even coming to see us and he's coming, but the fact that he's living alone, it's hard to get sober, like living alone, because one of the biggest triggers for people is coast is clear, and the coast is always clear. And so when you're in trouble and life is really stressful and bad, and you're trying to quit doing whatever, and there's no one else watching, that's a bad combo. So I prefer to have the family involved because I think it just is better. It's better for my person, the person that has the addiction. It's better for them all the way around. But yes, I work with people who don't have family, and I will work with people who literally don't have family. But I don't like to work with someone who has a family, like who has a spouse or is living with a parent, and just work with them and that other person not come, because I mean, I can get them to like coming. I don't have a problem with that because, like I said, I'm good at that. But I feel guilty because I feel like it's wasting money, honestly, and time. And I know that I'm not going to get very far unless we have that other piece in place.
That's interesting. So is that what you're kind of, I know it's not salesy, but is that your proposal to that person then, hey, this will go a lot better if your family's involved? Is that how you try to get them to get the full unit involved?
Yes, if the person, well, yes and no. Normally it's the family that comes first, and then they eventually get the addicted person coming. So it's really
Okay.
90% of the time that's a non-issue.
Sure.
Occasionally when I have someone that like calls themselves independently looking for their own help, then that becomes an issue. And it's really not as hard as you think, because you might think, well, they don't want their family to be involved because they don't want their secrets out, or they don't want, they'll be worried about their confidentiality or something like that. But really, they're so frustrated with their family. And when I say, hey, I can help you with that, they're like, yeah, please. And so it's really not that hard, honestly, because they have a list of complaints about things their family's doing. And I say, you know what, she needs to talk to Campbell, or she needs to talk to Kim. They're going to set her straight or whatever. And they're like, yeah. And then they get them right up here.
Oh, I love that. So you bill it that way. We're going to set that person straight, even though the truth is probably, but
the truth is on both sides. Yeah.
I was going to say the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that leads into a good question. How do you handle when you're getting different stories from one side or the other? How do you address the conflict without violating confidence, or is everyone just kind of in on it and the confidence thing isn't a big deal?
That's a good question, and it's a hard scenario. When people see us in that team approach, they understand, because we tell them. I mean, we're not holding any secrets, that the two counselors will know everything, and the two counselors will communicate about what's happening among each other. So me and the other counselor will be pretty open with what's happening, but the information won't necessarily cross to the other person unless you want it to. So like if I'm seeing I don't know, a 20-year-old who's smoking weed too much, and Campbell seeing the parent or something like that, Campbell and I will probably both know, because we treatment team both the information. But if my person tells me something in confidence that they don't want that other person to know, that's not going to cross. So,
Okay.
you know, they just have to say, hey, I mean, they don't even usually have to say it, because it's usually pretty obvious, honestly, what
Yeah.
they would or wouldn't want that person to know. So there's that. As far as like the stories not lining up, that can be really difficult. There's always some discrepancy as far as like one person feels like it's a bigger deal, one person feels like it's a less big deal, that kind of thing. But sometimes it's literally like, wait a minute, like, are we talking about the right? Like, we'll literally look at our like calendar. Wait, are we talking about the same people here? Because it's that far off. And that can be really hard. And if that doesn't get lined up, then sometimes we have to get everybody in the same room and say, hey, like, are y'all the ones married here, or do we have we've mixed something up, you know? And then we kind of have to pull it out, like, while everybody's in there.
The stories can be that dramatically different. That's pretty interesting. What about motivation? Does the motivation wane throughout the process? Like, I imagine, when you think about the pink cloud in alcoholism, I've read where it said that the pink cloud occurs. And for listeners who don't know what I'm talking about, the pink cloud is when somebody enters early sobriety and they just feel good and they feel positive about the experience of sobriety. And that, I've read that from a psychological standpoint, that comes about because you're finally addressing something that you've known in the back of your mind you needed to address for a long time, and it's finally happening. And so there's a period, sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's months, where just that knowing that you're addressing the problem gives you a sense of relief. Does the motivation wane for the people you're working with? Like in the beginning of the process, or is everybody motivated? And then maybe the person that's consuming the substance gets a little less excited about the process, but the family still is. Do you have to balance? Like, is somebody scheduling their appointments and the other one's dodging the phone calls? Like, do you have to deal with that sometimes?
It's Yes, the motivation, as far as especially the person who's getting sober, that motivation tends to ebb and flow. The family member side tends to stay fairly consistent until they get to a point where they're just done, and sometimes they're just done, and that usually for valid reasons. But yes, that motivation ebbs and flows, and I feel like that's a natural part of the process, and you have to let people work through that, as far as, where they're at in their journey, in their active stage of changes. Like I said before, one of the things I'm good at is dealing with people in those really early stages, people that are ambivalent about it, or they're not sure they want to stop, or they're not sure they need to stop, or, they think like this really isn't that big of a deal, or maybe I can control it, or whatever. That is, this doesn't bother me to deal with, I think, just because I've done that my whole career. What is hard and a little bit heartbreaking is when you've had somebody who's like really doing well for like a good while, like had real recovery, not just like 2 days sober, but like really doing it, like turn their life around, and then change their mind. Maybe they've had 6 months sober, maybe they've had 2 years sober, maybe they've had whatever, and then say, and then to watch how quickly not only just does the relapse happen, but just they shift as a person. It's like one day you're dealing with, and the next day, like everything that happened, it's like it erases it. It's wild. The personality shifts, the insight shifts. It can go quickly, and that is like mind blowing.
Is there one kind of thing that prompts a relapse like that? Is it bad interactions with the family? Is it, they get fired from their job? Like what, or can it be just any number of things?
You know what? When someone is fairly solid in their recovery, it's not usually like a big thing like that that triggers them back. This is usually, and I can usually feel it coming on, it's a conscious decision to go back. Like they decide, I call it the it'll be different this time approach.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I've stabilized, I've detoxed myself, I've got my new habits, I'm not stressed about that thing over there anymore. Like, I think it'll be fine if I just do it, and they have this big game plan or whatever. So in my experience, it comes on over the course of weeks. It's not like, they think about it and they talk themselves into it more than it is like I'm under so much pressure, I just lost it kind of thing.
Yeah. Putting rules around it, right?
Mhm.
And I've heard you talk about the fact that there's a process to getting sober. In my opinion, that's one of the parts of the process is I don't know that I've met anyone who doesn't have some form of rules that they try to put around, especially when we're dealing with alcohol, around their drinking so that they can keep it in their life. And it's like the last thing they want to do is 100% sobriety, and they have to exhaust all other alternatives before they're willing to do that.
Yes.
Is that your experience as well?
That's definitely my experience. Yes.
Yeah. Super interesting. Well, we've got some questions specifically from some of the participants in our groups that we're going to ask in just a second. But if you sit tight for a minute, Amber, we're going to tell our listeners about our sponsors. We are supported by SoberLink, the high-tech, tamper-proof, stellar quality, best-in-class breathalyzer and accountability tool. Sherry, innovators take a unique approach to a well-known problem, and they come up with solutions that get people's attention. Take the Wright brothers, for example, Orville and Wilbur. You know those names.
Yeah.
They were bus drivers, don't you know, who always dreamed of flying buses to get them around midtown Manhattan traffic. So they invented the airplane. And the next thing you know, 747s.
Bro.
Or James Naismith.
The inventor of basketball?
Yeah, that's him. I think he was a really tall guy who sucked at football. So he hung a peach basket way up high and said, "Suck it" to all his meathead football friends.
All right.
Or take today's guest, Amber. She invented YouTube. All right, that's not true. But she did create a unique and innovative approach to treating people suffering from addiction and also their loved ones. The Wright brothers have nothing on you, Amber. All of this innovation makes me think of SoberLink.
Is that because SoberLink's high quality tamper-proof design?
No.
Or their 24/7 facial recognition software
No.
support? Or the color code reports sent to accountability partners that are court admissible in all 50 states and Canada?
No.
Or maybe it's because of their scheduled testing and commitment to accuracy?
No, not really. Not any of those things. Although those things are pretty awesome that SoberLink does. When you put it all together, it's serious innovation from our friends at SoberLink. You see, they are changing the game. Instead of selling a gotcha device that partners and co-parents can use to catch their person in a relapse, their product and system is designed to be predictable, to build trust, and to enhance family safety. So whether you're a former drinker who wants to rebuild trust with those around you, or you are the partner or co-parent who deserves peace of mind, you need to learn more about this innovative company that really does care about their customers.
So just request a promo code and learn more. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, just request a promo code. Why should we take that first step, though?
Well, because it's easy. And learning about innovators in our industry is the way to find peace and emotional safety. Just request the code and see how it feels.
See how it feels. That's all we're asking people to do. Request a promo code for $50 off your SoberLink device. Take that first step. It is easy and there's no commitment, and you can learn more about this awesome product and company. For that promo code for $50 off your device, please go to soberlink.com/untoxicated. Sherry, we are supported by Echoes of Recovery. We are offering listeners a free 30-minute video call session with you and me. If you are the loved one of an alcoholic, this offer is for you. This is not therapy, it's peer support. It is a chance for you to share what you are going through with people who truly understand.
Yeah, I remember when you were in active addiction, Matt, and well into your recovery, but I felt so alone, so alone. And I felt like there were a lot of resources to help you get sober, but very few to help me. And no one even seemed really curious about what I was going through. I know it seems a little needy saying that, but it was a real loneliness and it hurt.
We are ready to listen, Sherry and I, that is, and ready to share what we've learned through our experience and through hearing the stories of so many 517 case studies and counting.
So, in your 30-minute free video call with us, we will listen with empathy and share some of the details of our Echoes of Recovery program that's full of loved ones of alcoholics who truly get what you're going through.
To sign up for your free 30-minute video call with Sherry and me, please go to echoesofrecovery.org and answer just 5 simple questions. It shouldn't take you a minute to take advantage of this offer and sign up for free. Please go to echoesofrecovery.org. All right, Amber, let's see what we have for you next.
Hey, can I speak on SoberLink? Because there's no bigger
Yeah.
SoberLink fan than me.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, I'm the biggest SoberLink fan. Yes.
Yeah.
I've been using SoberLink in my practice long before I was doing YouTube. And in my experience, it is the most effective tool out there for getting someone sober and keeping them sober, and more effective than going to meetings. If people ask me and they're like, well, should they go to sessions or have SoberLink? I say have SoberLink. Like, that's how strongly I feel about it, because it makes being sober so much easier for several reasons. One is because the hard thing, especially early on, is fighting that, like we said before, that coast is clear trigger, or that, my wife is gone to Target and with the kids and she's not gonna be back for 5 hours. I'll just have 2 and then that's all. And I won't even have my breath smelling bad by the time she gets here. Right. And then of course we know how that story ends. But when you have SoberLink, you're not gonna get away with it. And so because you're not gonna get away with it, you don't have those sneaky thoughts. And so you don't have to wrestle with yourself. You don't have to remake that decision 1,000 times a day and rely on your own willpower to get you through tough moments. And so because of that, you have a lot less cravings. You have a lot less mental struggle about it. And it's just easier. It's like making the decision once instead of making the decision 1,000 times a day. And then beyond that, it makes it easier because it puts your family member at ease, which makes your life a whole lot easier. They're not smell checking you. They're not sneaking behind you. They're not constantly asking you the questions with the squinty eyes and not believing you and smell checking you, all that stuff. So it actually, it helps the family, but it helps the person get and stay sober. Most of the people I see are able to get sober without ever having to go to treatment. And so you were talking about that. What does the motivation ebb and wane? It does. And that's what SoberLink is there for.
That's really interesting. Even when we brought them on as a sponsor, I didn't understand what I understand now. And that is, if somebody pushes back and says, yeah, SoberLink's great, but it's not cheap. And it's not. There's a lot. It's more than a device. It's a program.
Yeah.
And they say, well, I'm just going to go on Amazon and buy a breathalyzer for $20. But then they're constantly jabbing that thing in the alcoholic's face. And I feel like that just creates conflict. Would you agree?
Yeah. Before I learned about SoberLink, we had a lot of couples specifically, and sometimes parents and young adult kids, but who did that. And that creates several problems. Yes, you can go and you can buy a breathalyzer anywhere these days, honestly. You can get it at Walmart, wherever. But the problem with that system is that it relies on the family member to have to ask the person to do it. And every single time you do that, it makes both people feel terrible. It doesn't feel good on either side to be the one asking. Somebody comes home from work and then you guys say, hey, it's time to take your test. Everybody feels super cringe and uncomfortable about that. And because of that, the family, it's not going to stay consistent, because eventually it's so uncomfortable. You really don't want to do it and you get complacent about it and you stop doing it. And then it stops serving its purpose. Because in my mind, the purpose isn't to catch someone doing it, it's to prevent it from happening. And unless you're doing it consistently, it can't prevent it from happening. So it's not let me keep this breathalyzer in my drawer, and if I think they're being sketchy, pull it out. That defeats the purpose. Like, what's
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
use in that, right? For me, it's about prevention, and the SoberLink way is sort of a set it and forget it situation where it doesn't feel like an accusation from your family member, because it's not, it's just, it was a schedule you came up with, right? And it's just automated, and it keeps the family member out of that bad guy role. So I try to keep families out of that whole process whenever possible. Like, sometimes you just have to be in that system. Like, sometimes family member has to administer a drug screen, but if there's a way around it, I think it's better not to do it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, appreciate that extra endorsement. Couldn't agree with
Yeah.
you more.
Well, it makes me feel really good that we're also endorsing them as well.
Yeah.
And I like that you mentioned that it's this thing that you never have to think about like
Mhm.
1,000 times of temptations a day. And that's how you felt when you decided to stop drinking and you were really working on it. You're like, it's so freeing to say, I just can't do it at all. I can't
Okay.
drink at all, rather than try to, but you exhausted all those scenarios.
The mental
But
gymnastics
But
of the
just relieving
rules
yourself
and
of that.
so awful.
That's a really good
Yeah.
point.
Not drinking at all is so much easier than drinking less.
No,
So much
100%.
easier. That's what people don't
Well, that-
understand. Is like, when they're trying to drink less, I'm like, you're just torturing yourself. Like I say, I'm not even saying you can't do it. I'm just saying I don't know why you want to do it. Like, it's misery.
When I think of ways to divide addictions, a lot of people talk about you've got substance addictions where there's a chemical involved, and then you have behavioral addictions. I don't think that's the dividing line. I think the dividing line is between things that you can fully abstain from and things that you can't.
Yeah.
Like the real empathy I have is for people with food addictions or technology addictions. You can't live without food or technology in our day and
Right.
age.
I totally
You can
agree.
live without alcohol. You can live without meth. Like, you can do that and thrive. And so, honestly, I think, since our primary focus is on alcohol, there's I know it's a highly addictive substance, but there's a way in which it's actually an easier addiction to kick. Easier is I probably shouldn't use that word, but you can get
Simpler,
past it,
like
and
it's less complicated.
and you can
Simple,
live
yes.
the rest of your life with it in the
Simple.
rear view mirror without having to deal with it on a daily basis. Like if you have a food addiction, for
Mhm.
instance. So super
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. All right. So I have this question, and I believe this question came from one of our friends.
It did, in fact.
So, do you have situations where the romantic partner or the romantic relationship isn't going to survive, but the couple like still needs to co-parent together? Do you? I mean, I know it maybe sound like sort of a marriage counselor or a mediator, but do you take on that role sometimes, and you're working with both people that are the parents, but not trying to get that romantic relationship reconnected?
We're okay with taking on that role. What we don't get involved in people's divorce proceedings. So we don't show up to court. And the reason we don't do that is because there's no way I can work with someone and them have any level of safety and honesty with me if they think whatever they tell me is going to come out in court and they're going to lose their child or something over. So will we get involved with that therapeutically with a family? Sure. But they have people that are like specifically designed just to assess for court. And I'm always like, if you need that, get that there, because that's what they do. They're not trying to build a long-term
Mhm.
relationship with you. So I'm like, no, I don't like to. I tell people never release your counseling records. It's never good. Don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, another question from one of our listeners. Often, addicts have or receive co-occurring diagnoses, however you say that word in the plural, for things like ADHD or narcissism. I mean, I think sometimes the family members try to assign those labels, but sometimes it's a legitimate co-occurring diagnosis. Is that something that you see in your practice? And, how do you help with things that go beyond addiction? Is that something you get involved in?
Almost everyone that has an addiction has some other co-occurring problem. I mean,
Mhm.
if they're to the level of seeing me, they are at least depressed and anxious. I mean, just and most of them have ADHD. So those kind of things I think go along with it. And to be honest, getting sober makes those problems better by 70-80% right out the gate. Not that they go away, but they get a lot better. So most any addiction trained person is plenty qualified to deal with those things that kind of always come along. Occasionally, there's a more severe dual diagnosis, like schizophrenia or severe bipolar disorder or severe PTSD, that kind of thing. When it's that kind of situation, then I usually like for people to also have someone else that's dealing with that. These days in our practice, we do coaching, even though we're licensed counselors. We don't even do the mental health part very much at all anymore. But even when we were doing like full out treatment, if it was severe enough and it needed a specialty person, we like to have that being simultaneously dealt with.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear you say that when it's not something severe, when it's something that you deal with on a daily basis, the degree to which getting sober will help with those other things. I know for me and for a lot of people, a lot of the people that we work with, they seek us out because of our writing and because of the podcast. And so they really relate to our situation. And from the addict side, they relate to my situation. I write a lot about anxiety and depression that were directly related to alcohol. And when I would drink to relieve the stress and anxiety and the depression, not understanding for so many years, that the alcohol was also what was creating the rebound of depression and anxiety on the back end.
Yeah, you
But
don't even
just
know you're in the withdrawal cycle. Like you're really
exactly
right. Yeah. So true.
But we've met so many people that either their case is really similar to mine, where there's not been pharmaceuticals involved, or maybe they have gotten so severe, like let's say with anxiety, that it's been medicated. We're not doctors, we're not therapists, we don't ever recommend somebody adjust their meds, but through the help of their healthcare provider, they are able to taper down the anxiety meds and sometimes taper all the way off as the sobriety and the recovery work takes hold. And so it's just, I know it's a cliche, but this whole idea that alcohol pours fuel on the fire of other things, it's really true, isn't it?
It's extremely true. You're not gonna, no matter what the substance is, you're pouring a bunch of substances on your brain. You're gonna have symptoms of pretty much. You're gonna look like you have all the mental health disorders. And
Yeah.
so it's really hard sometimes to separate what's what until you get someone sober. Sometimes it's clear. Like if someone's manic and they come and talk to me, I can see that they're manic. And then that's not gonna, I guess if they were doing meth and they were manic, it might be hard to pull apart, but some of it's very easy to see, but most of it, it's hard to figure out what came first, what's causing what's really there. It takes some time to really clear that up.
A big one we see a lot, not co-occurring conditions, but co-occurring substances. And I want to get your take on this. We see a lot of people that use alcohol, and as marijuana becomes increasingly legal across the country, they use marijuana as well. And the way it comes across outwardly,
Presents itself.
the way it presents, right? Alcohol often leads to arguments and yelling and breaking shit and just being an unpleasant human being to be around, whereas the marijuana often leads to lethargy and being a couch potato and not fulfilling your commitments, but there's less dramatic outcome for the families. And so I can't tell you how many situations we've seen where the person takes the alcohol out, but they keep the marijuana in because they say it's helping with their anxiety. And because they're not screaming at their kids anymore, the family does see some benefit. I'm curious about your opinion about marijuana, alcohol, and how important is it to remove both? Or do you have people who want to keep going with the marijuana when they pull the alcohol out? What's your experience?
Yes, people want to keep one or the other. Those are the two bargains. And sometimes people want to quit like a harder drug, but they think, but I can still drink, alcohol is my issue. Or they think it's usually the bargain is I want to either keep drinking some or keep using marijuana some. And for the most part, that doesn't work out well. Almost, I would say 90%. particularly if you've been using both things fairly regularly and you quit one thing, you're just gonna use the other one more to bridge the gap. And even if the other thing wasn't addictive at the time, you haven't taken the time to develop other skills to manage life yet. And so if you're just immediately right out the gate substituting it with something else, then you're probably not going to develop those skills. And the substance you're still using is very likely to become a problem if it wasn't already a problem. So I don't think it works to do it, especially if it's right out the bat, right out of the gate, like you're stopping one, that doesn't work. And I don't like saying this because I don't think it works very often, and I don't want to give people the idea, but occasionally I have had people who stopped addictions, like maybe an opioid addiction, and they were stopped for a very long time, and then eventually maybe they have a drink occasionally or smoke occasionally or something, and that's okay. That works all right. But they've had a lot of recovery under their belt, like they're dealing with life. There's a lot of pieces there. So occasionally that works. That does work out okay. I don't see it work out very well when it's happening all at the same time, stopping one thing but continuing something else. I don't know that I've seen that work.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's important because we have a lot of situations where there is, both being used, but then they say that the marijuana isn't an issue, but they probably are using it, and they haven't taken that pause and really done the work of recovery to then step back in. Because then you get the argument, well, it's medically, prescribed for a lot of people for, some of these issues that I have.
Like anxiety,
depression, pain, those sort of things. So it's really, I like how you've said that, there needs to be a big break in between, and there needs to be the recovery and the healing and the stopping of all substances to really give your body time. And then, take that approach. Cause it's such a BS line when the partners have stopped drinking and they're like, but I need the weed.
But it, as usual, is complicated. A lot of times it doesn't work even if there's a big gap. That's why I sometimes hesitate to say that, but I want to be honest. I want to tell people the truth. So it can work occasionally. But even though I don't think it works, it's one of the bargains. And just like you have to let people work through all the bargains of cutting back, whatever it is, this is just another version of that. And so even though I know that it doesn't work, it's still important. It's important to understand that this is just one of those check boxes that we got to get through to figure that out.
Yeah.
So I guide people through that. And then the way I help that go better is I say, this is my experience. A lot of times this happens, that might not happen to you, but let's be on the lookout for this and this and this. And so because I'm not saying, no, you can't do it, then it's an open conversation, and it allows me to plant some seeds so that they can look for, if these things happen, I might want to reassess this issue. And it makes it not a contentious thing. So do I think it works? No. Do I get all on my high horse about it? No. So.
Oh, that is absolutely your superpower. And I suck at that, man. I don't want people to experience, I don't want people to go through all the steps I went through. I want to save them some steps. So I do get on my high horse,
people
but
are stubborn and they have to learn their own hard way.
And if anyone knows people got to learn their own hard way, I'm the person. I don't listen to anybody. I bang my head against the wall till it falls off.
Listen, I've learned my own hard way that trying to force it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's why I've come to terms with that. But I get it. It comes from a place of care and concern and not wanting to see someone suffer, and realizing that there's going to be some painful moments in there. Sometimes I say my entire job is like watch people make mistakes and tolerate it. It's not easy. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you've got the patience to do it and the skill set. It's impressive. Okay. Let's end on this question. Sherry and I were both big believers on what we call resentment processing. It's, dealing with those traumas that have occurred during the active addiction stage. So in your practice, you've got the kind of the divide and conquer approach where you're working with the people with the use problem, and you've got Kim and is it Cameron? Campbell, sorry. Sorry, Campbell. Kim and Campbell that are working with the families. do you bring everybody together at some point so that those resentments can be processed directly? Is that part of your philosophy? Is that part of your approach?
We do bring everybody in the same room sometimes. We call it lawyering. So we don't let you go in the same room without your lawyer. Like you wouldn't show up to court
Okay.
without your lawyer. I say, don't you get in there without me. Especially my people are the ones that don't need to show up without their lawyer. You know, they're going to get done for.
Yeah.
So we do that, but not usually to process resentments. It's usually to get into agreement about something or make a decision about something or solve some kind of specific problem. I don't know that we've ever done it as far as processing through resentments. Do you guys do that? And if you do, how does that go? I'm probably too scared to get in the room and let people process resentments. I'm like, oh, that might get ugly.
I mean, we do. We have 3 separate programs. One for the people on my side of the fence, one for the people on Sherry's side of the fence, and then our third one, we call it the Marriage Evolution. It's just a once a month program where we actually have them do a little writing about, kind of pain points, and then the whole group reads together. So it's not just. I mean, we're not therapists, so we don't do 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 or however you'd say that. So it's more of a group peer support approach. But we do encourage a resentment processing process. I know that's overuse of the word process, which is the approach that we used. It involves a lot of learning listening skills and not just completely and automatically, demeaning and deflecting and denying, but actually learning to sit there and listen and absorb. And hopefully, the whole idea behind it is to validate each other's experience without, it's not all about apologies. It's about just acknowledging, yeah, what you went through, that sounds terrible. That sounds really hard. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you it wasn't as bad as you say it was.
Right.
And so that's the approach that we take. We're never actively participating in those conversations because, like I said, that's just not where our qualifications land us. But we do try to teach the approach to people who want to go out in the big bad world and do it on their own.
And I think we also encourage that when there has been longer term sobriety, there's been other work involved with, them working individually with their counselors and just kind of like Matt said, learning more listening skills. There has to be more respect and in the relationship. So we really kind of try to encourage that to the people that are in our groups to make sure and that they feel safe sharing and have that emotional safety in the house and for a long time before you can really kind of go through that. And so that's why our groups, we will be there to help them work around how to approach the partner.
It's almost like a skills building exercise. It's a
have
difficult conversations is what it is. And I like that. And probably doing it in a group, depersonalize it a little bit because it's like everybody's going and it doesn't feel like you're one person's under attack or whatever. And so I like that. And I like the idea of helping develop the skills to have hard conversations, right? How do I listen to something that's hard for me to listen to? How do I respond back? I like that. That's good.
The big thing that the group approach does for our folks and for Sherry and I, to be honest with you, is like the Matts in the room get to hear someone other than Sherry say the same thing Sherry says. And the Sherrys get to hear someone other than Matt say the same thing Matt says. It creates a lot of empathy that sometimes just between a couple that's been battling this for years or decades, they can't hear each other anymore. And so when you can hear someone that's in the same shoes say something, you go, oh, my partner's not just batshit crazy. This is actually how it impacts people. And it just creates a feeling of empathy.
Yeah, in our Marriage Evolution group, when we've talked about that, and I'll hear things that someone has said that their addict is doing or had done. And I'm like, wow, that, and then they kind of share a little bit of their experience with it and maybe some things that they were feeling, the addict was feeling that their partner was saying or how they felt they were being treated. And I'm like, oh, I have so much empathy for that partner. And I'm like, and then I look at Matt and be like, and I had 0 for you, at that time, so then I felt like, wow, even though it's years down the road, I can really appreciate where he was in his drinking days.
I like that idea because I never thought about it till you guys were just talking about it. But if you're the family member person, chances are, if you've gone to any kind of support group, the support group you're in is people talking about their addicted loved ones. And you get the opportunity to realize oh, this is like, this is what they all do, because everybody's got the
Mhm.
same story, right? But when you're the addicted person, even if you're involved in treatment or AA, they're not talking about their partners. And the
Mhm.
reason that's important is because what's really hard to get people with addictions to see is that, yes, I get that this person's behavior is out of bounds or problematic in a way, but it's probably a symptom of the addiction, right? Like, this is what
Yeah,
all the wives do. Every
that's
wife
right.
does this. So, and it's really hard to get people to understand that it's symptomatic of the dynamic, and that it does happen
Exactly.
like almost like across the board. Just like people with addictions, it's like predictable. They're going to do this, this, and this. Their wives are going to do this, this, and this. Like
Yeah.
same way every time. And so that's helpful, particularly I would think for the addicts to hear, almost because I- they think that their wife is just controlling and negative about everything, and that's specific to her,
That's
Mhm.
right.
and not
That's
specific to the
right.
problem.
Well, back to our earlier discussion point, the substance, whether it's alcohol or otherwise, it impacts both sides of the relationship. It impacts all the family members. The impact that it has is fairly consistent across families and across situations. And for us all to understand that the impact is widespread is super important. This was great. Great insight that you had to offer. Oh my gosh, we're so glad that you've made your fourth appearance on the Intoxicated podcast. We want to encourage all of our listeners, if they're looking for more of these kinds of insights, please check out the Put the Shovel Down YouTube channel. Amber is really a leader in our addiction recovery world, and she's got some great stuff. And plus, if you love her voice as much as I do, you'll get to hear a lot of it on the Put the Shovel Down YouTube channel. Listener, did you hear something today that you relate to? Did this conversation resonate for you? If the answer is yes, then I'm sure there is someone in your orbit who could benefit from this conversation too. One of the very best things you can do for your healing is to become part of the solution. Crush the stigma, participate in the conversation. Maybe you aren't ready to join one of our groups, but that doesn't mean you can't be involved in a meaningful way. All we're asking you to do is please share this episode with just one person. Copy the link and send a text or email. Put it on social media. Be bold. Claim the sense of belonging you deserve. Just one share. And thank you for listening to the Intoxicated podcast. You've got this, and we've got you.